Okay, so if you take a look at my screen, um, you will see the title of today's podcast: God, Stories, and I. The reason I can't show you my face is not because I'm shy. I've done a series of Bible talks on the book of John, the first two chapters at least. I think first three chapters over a series of about 10 episodes. So, excuse me. So, I mean, recording my face on the screen is not something that I'm not used to. I mean, um, yeah, I would personally feel that if you can see me, then it will be probably more, it'll be warm. It'll be a warmer experience. But I have to click record because I've been waiting on this for quite a long time. And sometimes whenever you wait on something and you try to perfect it and try to put in some finishing touches, perhaps you're making a cake and you're like, should I put a little bit more flavoring? Should I put a little bit more sugar? Should I put honey? And in the end, you realize that you never ever put it into the oven and actually get it done. So today I'm just going to go and get it done. So yeah, why God Stories and I? Because I made this podcast as a kind of a twist from the Bible talks that I've been giving. So the journey that I've been on for the last 6 months at least, which actually has its roots in my entire Christian and personal journey, is actually a journey where I learned to critique my own faith personally, and as well as the faith tradition that I was given. This is very localized because I'm sure in other parts of the world where you are at, you might view your faith in very different ways. And that is why I'm taking you through the different stages of my faith development, and some of it may be relatable to you and some of it may not. And I'm also taking you through some of the highs and the lows in terms of my own personal experiences. But you may be wondering, like, why is this being made in the podcast? How is this of interest to you, right? I guess there's a lot of podcasts coming out from the West that deals with well-being, mental well-being, um, growing, evolving, humanity, psychology, the self, understanding who we are in the world. But yet, a lot of it is from a very Western perspective. I do hope to start, as I always do hope to, a fellowship where we can have people right where we are right now in Asia to actually discuss how life is truly playing out for us here, and where we actually can look at the issues that do bother us right here, right under our noses, rather than a lot of times extrapolating or trying to infer from the huge range of insights that are given to us by the West. And truly a lot of psychology and philosophy has been written there. But I want to uncover what may be the philosophies that undergird our day-to-day Asian living, and how we might navigate through some of the pain and suffering that we go through here. And I think, of course, if you have been watching this podcast up to this point, then I guess some seeds of um, awakening that's inside of you, where you actually feel that you might actually want to lean in to find out what the roots are of certain emotions you have been feeling, or certain ways you have been looking at the world. Like, how has this Asian environment been shaping the way you think, and perhaps your journey. So I do hope that presenting this will enlarge a circle of friends where we can gather and truly help ourselves become better people in the process of processing our joys, our pains, our hopes in a contextualized manner, where we navigate through the insights that we have received and perhaps reframe them or reform them into something that is more flourishing, wiser for all of us. So let's begin. Yeah, so why another boring podcaster? Yes. I guess it's up to you whether you want to continue listening or not. But yeah, I want to ask, what's the emotions inside of you right now? If you were to put a pause on this podcast and if you were to write down two or three main emotions that are residing inside of you, what are they? I have been talking to a range of people through an app. It's actually called the Soul app. And I have met up with a few of them face to face. And in my conversations with people, even with two of my romantic partners in the past to present, have been people who are very different from me. They have been people that are way more integrated, shall we say, into this Asian way of life compared to me, who sometimes feel like I stand out like I'm a sore thumb. Every time I talk to these people, most of the times, I realize that you got to initiate a lot in terms of asking them about themselves to open up. There seems to be a sense of apprehension that they exude, especially to strangers. I mean, obviously, when we come across strangers, we do have some defense mechanisms and we go through what we want to say and what we do not, and impression management and all. But it's more than that. I'm not sure whether you have this experience where you go into a work environment and you realize people are just on their toes, where they kind of are unable to relax. Even as the conversation goes, it seems like they're trying to multitask. It seems like they are preoccupied. It seems like they are concerned about something, but they're unable to verbalize it. So I realized that over the times that I've interacted with people who are a little bit more integrated into the Asian culture than me, who is a little bit more, shall we say, I'm a bit more. I vocalize my emotions quite readily, and I like to name my own experiences, and I think that's why we're having this podcast in the first place. But if you talk to a typical Asian, by and large, there seems to be a silent sense of apprehension about them. Why? So I'm not sure whether for you, when you're writing down your three emotions, one of them is a little bit of unease. Perhaps unease about how the future is going to be, unease about how your past have been, and a little bit of disappointment, perhaps. Disappointment at how life has taken some twists and turns that you haven't really predicted, where you had planned and yet the whole thing had crashed. Whatever that thing is, could be relationships, it could be career, it could be family, where you have given so much and you felt that the returns were so under appreciated, and you felt undervalued. And yet all these things are just below the surface, because as Asians we don't speak much of that on that. So I mean, unless you are from a more I would say diverse background in your workplace or in your circle of friends, where you do actually name such things. But by and large, we go through our everyday life with this sense of apprehension or unease just below the surface, and we communicate that through our body language, where we become very passive or isolated from others. And I think for those of us living in Singapore, it is even more apparent, where we actually build even more, I guess, defense mechanisms and walls between us and others, because it is the rat race, right? So the fastest rat wins. So we have to make sure that our needs are cared for. So I guess the whole survival instinct kicks in. So there are a lot of reasons, and I don't want to belabor them, because I've been reading a lot about our own evolutionary tendencies and our own psychology and our own narratives that are handed down to us, and all that affects how we respond. But so far as to say that there's all this fear, unease, apprehension that's just beneath the surface. And of course, there's a lot of popular advice, right? Advice like just go do your thing, just go live your dreams, just go and step out and I don't know, start a company, just go and step out and I don't know, invest in Bitcoin, whatever. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of this kind of advice to make your life better. But I want to ask, has these emotions truly been processed? Have you actually sat down with these emotions and asked yourself, why were they there in the first place? Or are all this flurry of activities a way that we try to conceal that these emotions that are so disorientating and destabilizing? And I'm not talking about just some, I would say, occasional fears that we have, like, you know, can I have a better job, or do I look pretty with all the Instagram hype? No, I'm not talking about that. Or am I really talented? I'm talking about a sense of unease and apprehension that's followed us perhaps through our childhood that we haven't really resolved. And I think related to this idea of unease and apprehension is also the idea of regret. What regret is weighing on you? What regret is weighing on you? And I guess a lot of times we, in our conscious minds, we don't readily accept that we do regret. We kind of like, especially in a society that values do it now and live your dreams and you know that kind of thing, or be positive and spread positive energy. We don't readily accept that we, or acknowledge that we do have regrets. And a lot of times we park regret under the category of those things that I never really put effort in. You know, like I regret that I should have been a basketball player, or I regret that I should have continued with my piano training, or I regret that I didn't learn how to swim when I was young, you know, that kind of thing. But I'm not talking about those kind of regrets where we could have put in effort in some enterprises, although those are important to take note of as well. But I'm talking about the regrets of choices that we have made with the best of our ability, and yet it is blown in our face. I'm talking about choices that we have made in terms of what we want to believe when we were young, whether it is in a religion, whether is it in a way of life, philosophy, and yet and yet these things are subtle. These things are indirect. I don't mean like we go to a bookshop, we pick up a book, and then the book is on perhaps like five ways to gain friends, and we learn those principles and they fail. No, I'm talking about the subtle messages that we have received from our home, from friends, from church, at least from the limited church experience we know, or from your whatever other religious experiences you have if you're not of the Christian tradition, from society, from authorities, from culture. And all these things cause us to have stories about how the world works, right? All these things cause us to think that, okay, if I do this, I will get that. A plus B equal to C. You know, all these things gives us logical structures to hold our life up. But after living your 20, 30, 40, 50 years, if you were to stop and ask yourselves, what are the fruits, what are the effects of some of these bigger stories that we have been told to live within? Or we have tried to impose it on life and try to shape our life through those lens. Maybe the way we have looked at people. Like, are people basically bad? Or are they basically good? When we look at ourselves, are we basically bad? Or are we basically good? When we look at the future of the world or our society, is it basically hopeful? Or is it basically despairing? When we look at religion, is it truly flourishing? Or are the atheists right? Is religion debilitating and causing damage and hurt and pain? So when we look at all this, there is a pool of regrets that's building up, even subconsciously, because our body and our minds do keep the record, as psychologists now say, of what we call trauma. And trauma means that we have, with the best of our limited information, and and all this happens subconsciously, right? With whatever that we know, that we use to undergird why we do what we do every day, how we treat another person, why we take up this business deal, why we don't, why we invest, why we don't, why we choose to marry this person, or why we didn't, why we chose to date this person, or why we rejected the date. There is this sense that some of it has backfired. And I think this causes the sense of unease, apprehension, and it's this pool of regret that is building up. And of course, and we've gone on for about 16 minutes. So maybe we'll draw this podcast to a close just for today, just to let us sit in suspense and a bit of mystery about what's going to happen next. But I'm going to end with Jesus' words. I think it's in John. He said to a person that was actually lame for 38 years, sitting at a pool, and this pool was said to be miraculous. This pool was said to hold healing waters. If anyone would jump into the pool and go for a swim, you will be healed no matter what disease you may have when you first came. And yet this man said to Jesus, I don't have anyone to carry me in. Every time an angel comes to stir this pool and this pool becomes miraculous, I can't get in it. And yet his response was to Jesus' question, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? Strange question, and I know preachers have preached this till they are blue in the face. And they usually use this to kind of get people to believe that Jesus heals, right? So, do you believe I have the power to heal? Do you believe that you don't have to focus on your own limitations and I can do it? But I want to focus on something else today. And I guess as the podcasts go by, you realize why my reading of the Bible and Jesus' story has also changed dramatically. But in essence, the perspective I want to bring out today is Jesus is asking the man not so much to consider Jesus as a miracle worker. In the question that he doesn't directly ask, do you think I can heal you? That's not the point. The man might have thought that Jesus could heal him because he might have heard about how Jesus was doing miracles elsewhere. But the point Jesus was asking in this question, what we do know is Jesus asked, do you want to be healed and get out of this pool? Do you want to be healed and get out of this pool? So, and keep in mind that this healing is from a condition that has been with this man for 38 years. So it's a long-term debilitating condition that has kept the man bound to that spot, unable to progress, evolve, grow beyond this infirmity, beyond the limits of how his life looked right now, right? Relationally, he can't go somewhere far or maybe somewhere even near. He can't even walk. He can't even reach out for that emotional support and bond, right? He is just there waiting for a miracle to happen. Intellectually, he can't learn. He can't go and read. He can't discuss with people, I guess, in the temples. He can't go to the temples. He's lame. And even if he goes to a temple, there may be some taboo in those times regarding the kind of people that the temple would seek to include in their community. And he is someone that seems to have sinned against God and therefore is suffering this terrible fate. So intellectually, socially, emotionally, physically, he's just limited. His life is contextualized by this pain for 38 years. So as much as the lingo nowadays is like, forget the past, keep moving on. And preachers and pastors have also said that this text is trying to tell the man, don't think so much about what's going on in the past for 38 years. Just now, do you want to be healed? Get up and walk, receive your healing, right? Just forget about the 38 years. But is that the point? If not, why is that the point? And if that's the point, why did John tell us that this man was was lame for 38 years? Why did John tell us that this paralytic, this lame man, was laying there day after day waiting for a miracle that doesn't happen? And why did John specifically record those words as the response to Jesus' question? And the man doesn't answer that question. He doesn't seem to find himself. He doesn't seem to find a sense of self in his answer. He doesn't say, I want to be healed, I don't want to be healed, I'm angry, I'm confused. He doesn't seem to find his voice. He has lost his voice in those 38 years. He has lost his sense of self in those 38 years. And I want to bring this perspective that in some sense Jesus is addressing, or the writer John is claiming that Jesus is addressing that all of Jerusalem and Israel at that time under Roman rule and oppression seems to be in that condition where the common people felt lame for a long, long time. And they have lost their sense of self. They have lost their sense of personal dignity, personal hope, personal belief that their lives do actually matter. That their lives can actually be redirected and can be lived outside of this context of pain. That their lives can somehow be healed from this context of pain, and that they can somehow rise again in a direction that is more whole and one that is filled with more healing. Because the Roman rule and the oppression, and because also of the corrupt religious system that we have talked so much about in our previous Bible talks. So Jesus is asking the person, do you want to be healed? Obviously, he's not just asking for a yes or no question. And I've heard preachers say Jesus is just asking him, he needs his permission before he can heal him. No, I don't think it's about permission and all that. In the end, he healed him anyway. But the point is, Jesus is seeking that to awaken. It's not asking him whether, it's not wanting a yes or no answer. It is seeking to awaken that sense of self that has died in that man. So I'm asking myself, as I process through my own traumatic experience in my life journey, which I'm going to unveil and expose and put bare in front of all of you as a way to help myself heal as well, as a way that where we can all navigate our own healing journeys. So we started by saying that, why this podcast? Because underlying our sense of self, there is a lot of unease, disappointment, and maybe a pool of regret. Perhaps because we have listened to certain advice, we have subconsciously picked up ways of looking at the world, we have listened to messages by society, by authority, by parents, by friends, and we have shaped our life in a certain way, and now we are stuck. Now we realize that the choices we make are not just choices where we are independently making them, but we are dependently making them based on the frameworks that we have been given, based on the influences that we have been given, based on what someone else and someone else and someone else has said. And this is not just a simple, don't listen to what they say, just do your own thing. No, even if you think you're doing your own thing, we are being controlled by these voices that are in our subconscious. And it may not be just things that we can now even articulate, but they are stories about how the world works. We talked about that just now. And in this context of despair, maybe the question that we can leave ourselves with today before we meet again for our second podcast, I'll decide when I'm going to do it. In the afternoon today, but perhaps after this. Before we meet again, let's consider this question of Jesus. Do we want to be healed? And it's not just a yes or no. I mean, obviously, yes, right? I mean, you're listening to this, you want to be healed, but is there a you that is left inside of you? Is there your sense of self that says, I'm fearful, and I want to name my fear for the very first time? I want to name my sense of unease for the very first time. I don't just want to go to another financial guru, another parenting workshop. I don't just want to send my kid to endless rounds of tuition. I want to stop this. I want to be healed. I want to feel safe, and I don't feel safe. And there's a perpetual sense of worry, anxiety, and apprehension that's in me. And I want to finally name it. I want to name this, that I am now like this man at a pool of regret for 38 years. Till next time. Take care.